Just for the record, can you state your name and the year you were born?
My name's Steve Selvidge, and I was born in 1973.
Okay. And first of all, could you talk a little bit about your childhood in
Do I
Memphis?
look at you?
Yeah, you look at me.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about your childhood in Memphis and the music you were exposed to?
Sure. I grew up, my father was Sid Selvidge, Memphis musician, moved to Memphis in 1961 from Greenville, Mississippi. So I grew up in his sort of world of he was friends and contemporaries with Jim Dickinson, Lee Baker, and worked throughout, Ardent Studios and stuff like that. So that was kind of my immediate musical world. And then just kind of whatever came with Memphis growing up in the 80s and stuff like that, like, sort of the hardcore scene that was based around the Antenna Club and stuff like that. And just having an awesome childhood.
Can you talk a little bit more about Lee Baker and like the influence
Absolutely.
he had on you?
So Lee Baker was a guitar player. He was in a band called Moloch in the late 60s, which is like the original Memphis hard rock band. But more so, he was a great sort of interpreter of blues music, and he just kind of had his own thing. He studied a lot with Ferry Lewis, legendary blues man, and spent a lot of time with him, and really kind of sort of mashed together his own style based on what he did and what he learned from those guys, Fred McDowell, stuff like that. And he was just a huge presence of a man and just a fantastic guitar player, and kind of our first, like me and Luther Dickinson, it was like sort of our first guitar hero. Like, he was right there, and every time my boy would play, we would just be right there in front of him, just in awe. When I started playing guitar, once I got halfway decent or whatever, Lee would come over just to hang out, talk to my dad or whatever, and I would just happen to be playing guitar when he came by, and then kind of and then walk down like, oh, I didn't know you were here, like fishing for a compliment, So yeah, he was a huge influence on me for sure.
Okay, awesome. So what age were you when you first picked up an instrument?
When I decided guitar is what I wanted to do, I think I was 10. I'd been playing drums prior to that, taking lessons, and I messed around with bass a little bit, but I remember 10 years old, I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to play guitar.
So did your dad immediately start helping you learn the guitar? Or?
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, he kind of let me find it on my own. He never was like, here, do this. But when I wanted to, I think I wanted to learn how to play Ziggy Stardust. He said, I tell you what, I'll teach you 3 chords, A, E, A, and D. And when you can go back and forth between those quickly, come back and I'll teach you something else, So then there was a book called The Complete Beatles that had like chord charts, like, with little chord symbols and everything. So I started figuring stuff out from there. Remember the F chord, I was like, I'll never be able to do this. And from then he showed me things here and there, but mainly he showed me by example of how to kind of navigate the waters of the music business. I got more of that from him, and some inkling of how to sing as well.
So what age were you when you officially decided, like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life?
10, really. Well, I mean, even before that, I mean, I used to say, I mean, it's hard to say really. I mean, everybody often wants to emulate their parents to some extent, but I mean, I remember when I was in first grade for kindergarten saying, I'm going to be a musician because that's what my dad was, I was never a firefighter or whatever else, but 10 was when it got a hold of me, and then, you have no real concept of what it's going to be to make a living or anything like that, I was going to be Kiss or Led Zeppelin or whatever,
Yeah.
But then, I guess once I got in a band that started doing well, I was like, okay, I might be able to make a living doing this. So that was sometime in the 90s. But it's all I've ever really wanted to do.
Yeah. So who was your first band, and like how did that form?
A lot of different bands just kind of coming up, the first real band that did anything like toured and played shows that were, of any decent size in town was a band called Big Ass Truck. And we formed in 1993 and toured and put out records and was on MTV and all that shenanigans.
Okay, so I guess going back a little bit, can you talk about the first time you met Paul Taylor? And, like,
Yeah.
how that formed?
I want to say it was around 6th grade. I could have my numbers wrong, but I feel like it was around the time I was in 6th grade. And literally, it was my dad knew Pat Taylor, and they didn't really run quite in the same circles. But he was, he admired him. He's a talented dude. So basically, it was just a play date. He was like, I think Paul was talented and kind of, showing some progress, and he was like, you two should hang out. So, I came over. By that point, I was, getting some stuff together, and he was like playing drums and like I've written these songs. I was pretty impressed. But we just hung out, and then like a year later, I guess, a couple years later, he got to Snowden. He was at Idlewild. I was at Snowden Junior High, and we both skated and were into the same stuff. So got to hang out then.